duplex in one lot.
It's 6
Not a
p.m.
single house.
We can start, I guess.
Get it up on
On the
you.
duplex.
Okay.
Do we know that Cindy is not coming?
I think it's still in Florida.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and open the meeting at 6:00 whatever. So the real reason I wanted to bring us back together again. Number one, I missed the last meeting, I'm sorry. But the other thing is, I think we've about figured out the additional stuff that we're gonna put in. There is one possible addition to it. But the other thing is, I want to get public input on this idea of controlling or accounting for, or even keeping track of rental property,
Short-term rentals.
short-term rentals. And I have again gone over their guidance on this. They don't say you have to. What they say is that they can come in and look at us and go, you're not complying with the intent, and then they can mandate it. So if we're not gonna do what they're recommending, I wanna make sure that we have dotted all the i's and crossed the t's so that they can't second guess us. They consider that critical to being able to provide affordable housing. If you can't get a handle on the rental properties that are out there, to even know how many there are, there's no way you can, with a good conscience, say that you are developing properties for that are affordable or for lower income. So I have looked at other towns, what they're doing, almost all of them, right, shooting the birds to get back up. If you cannot, any additional units cannot be rented for less than 1 year. Others are adding, you don't have to get a permit for rentals, but you do have to notify the town of any. So there's a bunch of ways it's being attacked where they're satisfying the requirement. But the other part is, I want to get the town's take on this. My whole concern with this, right from the get-go, is that in our comprehensive plan and listening to everybody's feedback on this, we are now being forced to balance two of our priorities. And one is providing more housing at a lower rate and available for our senior citizens and for those who are need help. They call it affordable housing. I don't think it's affordable housing. It's low income housing. It's really what they're developing here. It's not affordable housing. That affordable housing is another layer that they really haven't talked about, which is the reason for the additional and the accessory units that are not considered affordable. Anyway, the other thing, and those are both high priorities in our comprehensive plan. The other thing is, a very high priority is to maintain the environment of our community and to take care of the watershed and to be able to manage how much impervious is out there so that we don't overbuild at the detriment of our watershed. And we use a cracked rock aquifer underneath us, which is fragile. And if you exceed about 15% of your land and make it impervious. Yes, impervious or impervious. Anyway, water can't get through. Then you jeopardize that. And it's very difficult to measure that 15% and where you are. So the recommendation has always been that if you limit property building to 1 acre, so that you can't build on a property that's less than 1 acre, then you will stay below that 15%.
Hmm.
So this just throws that out the window. This makes it almost, we have to now do a balancing act. So if we're gonna be serious, so what I wanna know from the town, I wanna have a public meeting with the town and ask them, which one is more important to you right now? How should we craft this? Should we make it minimum as we can make it? So that we're just complying with the rules? So that we can minimize the impact on the environment? Or do we go with full intent and try to make affordable housing and low-income housing and your right to build more tiny houses on your property? Which one's more important to you? And the reality is, I don't know. I don't know what the town feels about that.
Well,
I know how I feel about it, but it's,
the input I can offer is from my 3 years when I was code officer. Remember, I don't know, 30 years ago, we made this 1 acre minimum.
Right.
And it would get voted. There were people who dissented, but most of the town was for it. I don't think any of them were for it because of the water consideration that you just brought up, protecting the aquifer.
Right.
It was all for keeping the rural flavor of our town.
Right.
We don't want houses everywhere. We love all the forests and the fields.
Right.
That was the concern that drove that initial 1 acre minimum, not the water at all, I don't think. I mean, it might have been a relevant point, but nobody ever brought it up. But in my 3 years of code officer, overwhelmingly, people were frustrated with that. They wanted out from under that because they wanted the mother-in-law apartment over the garage repeatedly.
What do we know about our aquifer?
I know nothing.
we know very little of it. It is mapped, except for where they can't map it because you've either had extensive farming going on, or, for example, on the airport, they can't tell you what the aquifer is because the runway's been there for so long.
Mm-hmm.
So they can only see peaks of it. But they have mapped the aquifer, the underground crack rock aquifer. For all our town, Owlshead, all around.
It's different places.
Yes.
No, and that's the key.
My house has plenty of water. It's been running over for 30 years.
Yeah, I'm on the low point on my road, so, I'm gonna be the last one to have trouble, and, but it's a good question, because, what?
The island.
Spruce Island.
So, because they are-
It's the only place in town that I've ever heard anybody have a water issue. Yeah. The rest of the town, all up and down 131. I've never.
I think at the last meeting, we agreed to let them have the house within a house and an auxiliary, whatever dwelling unit on their property in the VE zone. Okay, that was all agreement at the last meeting we had. I think we both voted to approve that.
Yeah.
So that, and then anywhere else, you had to have the footprint. You could probably have an additional unit, like a mother-in-law apartment over your garage or something in town. But other than that, you had to have the actual acreage to have the 2 places or whatever.
Yeah, the exception is gonna be for accessory units. And because the way the law reads on accessory units, if you allow residential structures, then you have to allow accessory units up to whatever their maximum is.
Right.
So the language that we currently got.
But I think we agreed that they had to have the water and they had to have the sewer.
And that's true everywhere.
Sewer is easy.
Yeah.
That's designed by the engineer, because of the number of bedrooms that you're adding. Can your system handle it? Okay, you need an upgrade.
But you need
Well,
land to do
That's
that.
kind of a crapshoot. I like, can you service water for that apartment? And the 5 others that are right on this road now that are all gonna get added. That's the wild card that I don't know who determines that.
I think
We don't have anybody in fact. that
I think
determines-
you have to have this space. If you're outside of the VE, that's all we're doing.
Right. I'm just saying,
Even in the VE,
Yeah, you need,
to add an additional dwelling unit of any type, accessory dwelling unit or affordable dwelling unit, you still have to meet the state requirements for square footage for sewer and water.
right, but water is not municipal, and therefore it's just a crapshoot around in the.
Well, they have to prove to the CEO with some kind of a lab report that they can provide potable water.
How about a dowser?
That may be where they can find it.
Well, all those things
Until
can be,
the
they can be all written into the ordinance, that's fine.
Yeah, that's it, that is in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there were a few questions that came up last time. I think she answered all of those. The only one I'm still not satisfied with is the difference between an additional dwelling unit and accessory dwelling unit. You treat them differently. There's different rules associated with them. But what in practice is the difference? If they just say, I'm doing an additional one, or if they say, I'm doing an accessory. And so
Well,
the
as long as-
CEO is gonna have. to
Well,
put it
let's say they have a 900 square foot house, they can have whatever percentage of that house.
For an accessory,
That's right.
but not in it, they can do an additional that's bigger than that.
Well, just say that they can't, you know what I mean? Just make sure that we have.
We can't, the law requires us to allow
Well, then we have to allow them then.
them.
That's all we can do. You can't, you know, you gotta go look at what they
But
say.
my question is, what is the difference between the two?
And what is the CEO?
There's really no difference to me.
But there's a difference in application. There's
Yeah.
a difference in how many of them you can have.
Difference in parking spaces
There's a
required.
difference on an additional one, we can require every dwelling unit to have 2 parking spaces.
What would you say size wise for an additional? Versus accessory?
So, no, here they say, you know, the accessory structure is usually understood to be a structure that is dependent on or pertaining to a principal use or main structure.
Right?
So,
I'm not sure what that means.
I would say that means it would be, you have to be under this, like the same
and
roof.
maybe they share the septic, or they share, you know,
Well,
it could be attached or detached, but sharing some of the utilities and stuff. While
Additional.
the additional can be totally independent with its own septic and own everything.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I think just correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I remember. I think the only difference is that accessory dwelling units are allowed on non-conforming lots. And they have restrictions over and above what's required of an additional dwelling unit because of that. So they have a maximum size and they're exempt from parking restrictions because their intended purpose is to allow for limited additional construction of dwelling units on lots that don't meet the square footage standards.
I agree with you on what the restrictions are, Dave. My question is, what's the difference in practice? Why can't I just say I'm building an accessory dwelling unit or I'm building an additional dwelling unit?
You can do either one interchangeably unless you're on a non-conforming lot, but you would never voluntarily restrict yourself to a smaller footprint if you have the square footage. So it's essentially like, I think the intent is for it to be a moot point in practice, because everyone who can build an additional dwelling unit will build an additional dwelling unit unless the parking requirements imposed by the town are onerous, in which case they have a choice. They can exempt themselves from the parking requirements by building something smaller, or they can build something larger and be subject to the parking requirements.
No, I think there's more to it though, because there are other differences between an additional and an accessory that make the accessory more favorable. You can put more of them. You can put more of them on any property. So if I want to put 4 of them out there, then I'll call it an accessory dwelling unit. If I'm only going to put 1, then I've got room for parking, then I'll do an additional. So the bottom line is that there's a difference in how we treat them. There's a difference in the requirements for both square footage and whether or not parking restrictions apply, but there's not a difference in definition of what they are. Other than saying that an accessory has to be subservient to the primary structure.
Yes,
And what that means, I don't know.
I think Gabe might be onto something though, in that they come up with this additional dwelling unit idea to try to promote more housing.
Correct.
And they said, well, but what if we run into this, well, then why don't we just make another category? We'll call it accessory and it'll be easier. And maybe that's where we are.
I mean, they are clearly saying here, it's up to the municipality to define the distinction.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's, yeah, they're definitely saying that we need to define it, right? Because it's too tough enough for them to figure out. But in my mind, I think that's gonna be the hardest part of the CEO's job is determining whether or not the dwelling that they're asking a permit for is an additional dwelling unit or an accessory dwelling.
But it may become clear simply by the fact that with the additional unit, you have to conform to requirements, density requirements, coverage of lot, that sort of thing, right? So it may be pretty obvious they cannot have this other dwelling unit and call it an additional, but they can under accessory. In other words, it might just be the viability of the lot to hold this next dwelling unit. Is it gonna come in under under additional or accessory?
To me, accessory is the typical mother-in-law apartment attached to an existing
Yeah.
house, and you do this addition there.
Yeah, that's how I would have defined it.
And then, the additional is something that's separate,
Yeah. Yeah, see, the way I would have defined it is, if it is part of an existing structure attached or part of,
Yeah,
internal to, then it's an accessory.
That makes it easy.
But if it's a if you're putting a second standalone house, no matter how big it is, then it's
it's an additional.
Can we define it that way? So
I don't think we can, but that's why I want to.
Why can't we? I don't think there is any,
I don't see either why we can't.
yeah, I think that would be the clearest, the simplest, the most logical.
I think that's what we voted on, something similar to that at the last meeting we
I
had.
can't remember.
Well, should be in the minutes, but I believe we had voted that they were gonna have you could have a house, could attach something to your own house, and then you could have one extra auxiliary dwelling unit on the lot. I believe that was voted on at the last meeting.
Yeah, see, you can have, an accessory dwelling unit doesn't have to be that. No, we can't define it that way, because that's right out of the law.
So then the only difference is the size constraint for the accessory, and that's it.
Right. And the parking lot. Because we can require every dwelling unit to have a parking space. We can't, or every additional dwelling
Yeah.
unit, every initial and additional, but we cannot restrict any more than we have for affordable or accessory.
Accessory, okay.
Right.
Well, right in here on number F. No additional parking should be required for any accessory dwelling, so the definition matters deeply in terms of parking.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, that's what Gabe was saying. is that- So if you don't have additional parking available, then you would almost have to go with an accessory, which would mean you'd have to build a
Yes,
smaller footprint. Okay, so
Unless you have a mansion already.
So,
Go with that.
yeah, so I'll.
You're gonna run that by, you're gonna ask
Yes.
her to help
Yeah,
with the definition.
yes, and I'm also gonna ask her to write a definition for additional dwelling unit, because she has said that she's doing all the drafts for the changes. Personally, I would like her to do that for the new law stuff, the stuff that we're changing. I just assume do it myself, but I need to talk to her about that. She may have a reason that she can do that. So as far as the other things, I think we, at your last meeting, you agreed to everything on there. The only question now is, do we require And we would, because if you currently today build a residential dwelling, a house, a family home, a single family dwelling, there's no requirement on number of off-street parking that you have. You don't require it at all. A lot of towns do. St. George requires 2 for every residential property they build. So we can add that
To our existing land use
existing
ordinance.
land use ordinance.
Yep. Shoreline zoning ordinance as well.
And so the only question I had is, do we want to go with 2? Or do we want to go with 1? And do we want to be different about an additional? Because we can restrict additional ones. So if you build an additional dwelling on your property, do we want to have the same requirement? St. George does. St. George
It
says,
makes sense.
2 or 1 parking space for the additional,
yes, it's,
1 maybe.
1 minimum
yeah,
for the additional.
and 2 minimum for the, or
Yeah.
1.
I mean, I could live with 1 actually.
yeah,
You can park 1 car behind the other, I guess.
yeah.
But more practically, they want to be side by side so that you can use.
I mean,
cars.
you know, the trend is to, smaller homes and so forth, and, if it's only 1 person there, it seems unfair to require 2 parking spots. But at the same time, most houses around us are built for families, and, 2 parking spots is not excessive.
No, especially if they got teenage kids.
I think it's reasonable to have a parking spot for each dwelling.
Okay.
So if you got 2 dwellings in one place, you have 2 spots. If you have an auxiliary or accessory, another dwelling, you have a parking spot for that.
The compromise would be 2 for the first dwelling and 1 for the additional.
Correct, yes.
That would be a
I
compromise.
would be, comfortable with that.
So you comfortable with 1? Dave?
Just
Dave?
agree with that suggestion.
2 and 1?
Yes.
Okay. So I think pretty much the rest of it's locked in. I read through a couple of other towns and what they're doing. They're all doing almost exactly the same thing. I'm a little surprised St. George did not attack the additional dwelling units. They didn't make any changes in regards to it. But they went exactly by the law, word for word, on affordable and accessory. So that they did not do any modifications to that, which we have. So then the last thing I wanted to talk about is the meeting on the 28th.
Yeah.
And
One more thing
Yes,
about
sir.
this, short-term rentals. I don't think we should have that.
that's why I want to do the meeting on the 20th.
Okay.
You want to include a discussion about short-term rentals?
Yes, primary reason I'm doing primary purpose.
Well, we had to do it anyway.
No, the auction.
For the review.
Yeah, no, well,
Let's do it today. I think we should too.
On our changes to the ordinance, which was a part of our law.
no, we're gonna do that later,
Oh,
because the town meeting, when we adopt this, won't be till the end of June. So we'll do it in May. We'll have a formal public hearing on the ordinance in May, right? Isn't that what we're looking at?
But what if people, say things and require some changes? That doesn't give us much time.
Well, that's why we typically do informational meetings ahead of time,
Okay.
so that by the time we present it,
We're having a public hearing on the 28th
28
of this month
correct.
at the end of the month.
right,
for the public.
not a public hearing, public information.
I don't think that's what we
Okay, so the
said.
purpose is not to, got it.
Yeah, the purpose of the meeting on the 28th is to present what the law says,
Inform them of all this.
inform them of what the law says and why we're being forced to do this,
Yep,
and what the compromise is by doing it, what we're giving up. And then to ask them how much they want us to compromise, because the law leads us towards accounting for short-term rentals and long-term rentals.
Well, I think your position is you want to regulate short-term rentals.
No,
I don't
that's
want.
not my position. That's not my position.
Okay,
Okay,
I don't think we should even bring it up.
I think we have to bring.
We have to.
Well, they're telling us, they're telling us.
But they need to know it's an option, not a requirement.
What?
It's not required by the state for us to have regulate short-term rentals.
No, what is required is that we consider it. That's what's required by the law, is that we consider
That's fine.
tracking rental properties to show that we really are serious and we meet the, not just the letter of the law, but the intent of the law. And that's written into the law, that's what we have to do.
I don't think, I read that.
I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah, MRS 4360.
Right, but look at it real closely there. It says, it's the May and that.
Municipal home.
We have the right to do that, but we have the authority to do that. I think that's what it says.
Correct.
Right,
We don't have to exercise that authority.
That's true,
Okay, that's where I'm at.
right. But
but their idea is that if we ignore it, we're not really following the spirit of what they're trying to get enacted in towns.
All right,
We're running counter to their
but I
idea.
don't wanna get that construed with the people saying, well, you gotta do this, when you don't have to do that.
And that's why I'm asking them, what do they want to do? Because your opinion and my opinion are just individual opinions. And I want to know what more people in the town think.
Well, you know what, then I think maybe it should just, I don't know if you can fully take the temperature of the town by this informational meeting, because there might be 5 people.
I know that's.
So,
Well,
so
that's
why do we have a
At least
meeting?
we can try.
It all
What's wrong with
depends
the
on how you
Nothing.
phrase the call for the meeting. If you
Right.
mention short-term rental and include the word Airbnb there and verbal, you know, the internet's not gonna work out.
Well, then you might get 10 people, but you're not gonna get a consensus of the town at all.
I have no short-term rentals in South Thompson, just wanna make that clear.
Well, nobody's pointing any fingers.
No, but I mean,
Well,
But that's
I
not,
kind of do, but
And nobody's coming at
but
you.
we say that, and again, we make it obvious, short-term rental, and you use those 2 keywords so that there is no underhanded way of saying, you are not telling me. It's there. If people don't show, that's fine.
I'm just saying, and they won't show because they just don't for informational
Well,
meetings.
but if we do put it out on the list,
I think we should,
as please come to this meeting and give us your feedback. The state is mandating some new requirements.
why can't they feedback just through the email? We've asked for all sorts of opinions before.
they can be read here too. the
It can be
meeting.
there, and then it can be presented at
Oh,
the
there's both
information
ways.
meeting.
Yeah, I'm saying what, just to try to garner as much as possible.
Right.
So that you're satisfied that you are indeed taking the temperature of the town on this issue.
Yes.
Just the hearing itself, I don't think will do it.
I don't really think that short-term rentals affect, local affordable housing. Because
Oh, it
usually,
absolutely does.
because
I have
well, most
no
of these
doubt,
along the shore.
I have no doubt that it
Well,
does.
what I'm saying is, Jeff, is if you're gonna build in South Thompson on the shore, you're gonna, it's a pretty high tax. You know, pretty high property tax, and that's what most of these are. I don't think there's that many inland or without shore access, put it that way.
Well, I can think of 2.
A couple, yeah, but I mean, the majority of them,
But we
I
haven't
know, we-
looked into that, so I think we'd be
That's hard.
surprised.
We don't know. We don't know what's out there. And I can tell you, there are a lot of people that are renting that are not on the water.
Yeah.
And some of them do it year round. Some of them do it just during the summer.
And the house is empty during the, October through May, the house is empty, and that's the loss of housing that people are concerned about.
That's right.
If you can buy a house from out of state and just make a lot of money from June through September, just shut it up. Who wants to deal with renters, long term?
Mm.
Just, you've maxed out your income,
Right.
shut it down. So that's a house that somebody working in Hanford can't afford to rent.
But the reality is, we don't know.
We don't.
well, I rent a house in South Thompson. I've been doing my taxes. And in the last 10 years, I've lost $3,000 a year on that house.
You don't do your taxes right.
I have one in Alzad, it's the same thing. Because I don't charge now. But the going rate for a house would probably be about $1,800 a month for most houses now. Some are more, some are maybe a little less, but they're all above that range. So is that affordable housing? No, not really.
Yeah.
Well,
Right
Rockland,
now, 1,200 is considered low income affordable housing.
the Rockland City Council just had a meeting on this, and I just read through all of the comments from the various, their consensus was they agreed with you that the, short-term rentals, it's not at all gonna affect, the availability of rentals.
No, it won't.
I'm not so sure I agree, but
The only reason-
Read that in the Rockland,
Yeah.
Jeff, there is a way that they will. And it's kind of happening last year and this year, you know, the economy, you know, then a lot of places are not filling up and some are rentals. So there's, you know, as they lose money that way, they will turn them into year-round rentals. But I mean, they may not be affordable rentals, but that's the thing. The listings are off right now.
but the Samoset is building 2 structures to house their workers. They can't find
Because they can't find
workers.
places.
Right.
And why? Because the workers can't live in Rockland.
Hmm.
They don't wanna, you know, drive all the way to Union and hope and try to find an affordable rent and drive all the way into Rockland to work. They wanna live in the town that they're gonna work in. So they don't work here. And the Samoset, and they're just one of many, are really struggling to find workers.
Right.
And the main reason seems to be it's a lack of housing.
Well, let's say
Even for hiring people like, police officers
Yeah.
I mean, Knox County Sheriff's Department has had that problem for the last 5
But you
years.
know, if you have a house and you're paying $6,000 in a property tax on it, then you turn around and pay $2,000, $2,500 in, you know, fire insurance on the place. And if there's somebody pays all the utilities, you're gonna have to pay the water if you're in Rockland, a place is an house. Ed, that's gonna be another, you know, $150 to $200 every 3 months. So you know, you're $9,000 just to keep a place. So then, you know, can you rent it for $1,000? Not really. You know, because you gotta keep it maintained. You know,
Right, so you're saying that
they priced out the affordable housing in these towns.
I
The
mean,
schools, you know, they're quite safe.
to me, it's obvious that houses are, you know, expensive to maintain.
Yeah.
What's needed is a development of affordable housing, like what they are doing at the Somerset. You know, you can't build houses that are going to be affordable unless they are tiny.
Right.
And then they take so much room. You need, you know, like they have.
On Maverick Street, they're getting the thing going there. That's
Where?
gonna be on Maverick Street.
Yeah.
Out there, they're gonna be doing some stuff.
is that senior housing on that?
Over 55, and it's 30% of your income.
Yeah.
So that's more affordable, but you know,
I'm glad they're doing it.
But
I am
you know,
too.
we're going to have to go build apartments in the floors, you know.
Yeah.
That's the only solution.
Wow,
You're right.
I mean, the reality is for us, this whole thing about affordable housing and even accessory housing, because we don't have city water and city sewage, they have to meet lot requirements that are based on digging a well and having sewage for it and meeting the LPI requirements for it. So the reality is, there's not gonna be any half-acre lots that have 4
Yeah,
dwellings on it. They're just not gonna be able to build a sewage that'll handle that.
The septic would live with it.
The septic, they're not gonna be able to do it.
and even here, I mean, what employment is there? People have to drive to get to their jobs. So it's like, you know, I don't know where the saving is, you know, if you
Yes.
don't have a car.
But again, and
it was brought up in Outset, they had a public hearing about it, and the residents there, they didn't want anything to do with regulating.
Well, that's the outcome, you know, this is America's
Mm.
capitalism,
That's what
free
you're gonna
enterprise, I can do what I want with my house, how dare you tell me I cannot rent out to, and, you know, I mean, that's the argument that way.
Right,
I thought we were just trying to have them register so we have kind of a feel of what
yeah,
it is.
that was my going in, that from the.
I think you get resistance from that.
And Kristen, she recommended that. She says, I am not in favor of regulating rentals or even having
Limiting the number.
But at least you get an idea of what it's like and, you know.
And she said, the bottom line is, that satisfies, in my mind, that satisfies the law's requirement.
And we may
and
see
we
that
would
it's
have
not
done our
a
due
problem
diligence.
because there are
If you
very
just want to
few.
register,
Just,
a
yeah,
registry of
Yeah.
our rentals.
just let the town know if you're renting your property. And the other side of that is, there's a lot of people that come into town and say, hey, Terry, is anybody renting property around here?
Yes, I get a lot of that.
And so she knows a few people that are renting. She goes, oh, how about checking with it? If we had a list
Right.
of everybody who's renting, we could help the rent. So
Which would help the local economy in theory.
right. So that was my.
Spruce Head Island, there must be, I mean, just alone, every week on Spruce Head Island in the summer. There must be 40.
No, yeah,
I mean, you have every possible situation. I know my neighbor, when her house burned down, she rented in House Head, and it was a house that's typically rented for the summer. The owner was more than happy to rent it for the whole year. It's like, you know, it's gonna have his income, no trouble relisting and again, running a risk. So if you can find a good tenant for a whole year, I think it's worth it, you know?
I did that a year or two ago. Somebody built a new house in South Thomaston. And they, basically, I let them house that at a house that I had in House Head.
Mm.
For, I think it was like $1,000 a month, but I paid all the heat and everything.
Mhm.
So it was a really, pretty much a wash for me, you know? I didn't have to heat it, but I mean,
Yeah,
I got somebody to stay in it, and then while they were building, and then of course, the same situation, this house was supposed to be done in 3 months, didn't get done until 5 months. So they stayed a little longer, but
Mm.
they're able to do that.
Well, it used to be, I mean, pretty common that people would rent in the summer. And then from September to, because when I was in my 20s, there was a whole bunch of us, we were all single and would rent somewhere from September through May, with clearly with the understanding that we had to leave Memorial Day,
That's what
because it was
we do.
gonna be rented all summer. That was the way when I grew up.
Right,
Now, with this but never were people able to get what they're getting now for these waterfront rentals. It's just,
Well,
the thing is just
the rent, the taxes have gone. Remember, I had a place in House Head, it was $450 when I bought it, now it's $450. Now it's $5,000, the same lot, 1 acre lot.
Yeah.
For taxes.
but I'm just saying, with this increase, it's the ability of outer state people who can buy these houses. They don't even live here. They're not even main residents. They can buy a house, they can just hand it over to Verbo or any of these guys. And
I promise you.
they're making so much in the 3 months, 4 months usually, that they have no interest in.
And I promise you, there are gonna be people gonna buy property here. And then build as many lots as this new law will allow, as many dwellings as this new law will allow. And then turn them all into short-term summer rentals.
Summer rental.
Guarantee that's gonna happen.
Well, they're not the affordable.
No, they can't if it's affordable.
No, that's right.
So the VE, they have another piece, but they could do that anyway, Jeff, if they have enough land to build these. I mean,
Well, but now we've just expanded how many they can build.
Yeah.
we've expanded, yeah, well.
But here's the other thing too, the other tool we have to control it is, and I didn't even know we had this tool before, but we apparently have had it for years. The subdivision ordinance applies to dwelling units. So if you put a third dwelling unit on your property, even if you have 500 acres and you put 3 dwelling units on that property,
It's the third that triggers the subdivision review.
that's right, but dwelling units, it's not lots. I thought.
Are you sure?
Positive.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
I was a pretty stupid code officer. I never knew that. I thought it was the breaking off of the
Land, selling the lot.
It's the law.
But it's
No,
not the law.
It's not.
And the state law,
I mean, it
Is-
is the law, but it's also.
But then how can they be telling people that they can, this is gonna be an absolute.
Well, but my question is this,
Yeah,
if
they're gonna.
the owner, say this, the owner owns all of them.
right,
You're saying it's a dwelling, the subdivision used to be, if I sold one
different.
Exactly.
John sold it to you.
no, that's not how that's not it.
I'm sure.
I'm positive.
Absolutely
We
positive.
gotta
We,
check.
we checked with the state, but I thought it was.
So wait a minute,
It's
what if somebody,
We have, you own all 3 properties. You own 100, you have 100 acres. You build 3 properties that you own, 3 houses that you own, and you let your kids stay in. They're all right here, they've got plenty of septic.
you can't do it.
You gotta do subdivision approval.
Let's say,
Wait a minute, so how can anybody come before the town and build a triplex, which they've done before? We have 3 unit houses, they've never triggered subdivision review, so.
Right,
it should.
That was in the code.
That's because none of us knew.
Well, let's
I
say,
didn't know that. I was on the.
Augusta can't make these regulations. And also.
It's been years.
let's say you have a street,
What they're proposing then is that every single person that they want to, of their own initiative, increase the housing in Maine, which is their intent, is gonna get tied up in a subdivision review.
Yes.
The planning board will be just like busy night after night after night after night.
And what Kristen said we can do, we are not attacking it right now. But we can change, we can alter our subdivision rule. We better. Not, we still have to require it to get subdivision approval, still has to go to the planning board, but you can have a different process.
what if you bought 3 houses right in a row off the street? You own one came up for sale next door, you bought that one came up for sale next to that one, you bought that one. So now you own them all. No subdivision,
They're on separate lots, right? They're already on separate lots.
they're already in
It
some.
doesn't trigger it. What triggers it is putting 3 dwelling units on the same lot. No matter what size the lot is, you put 3 dwelling units on a lot.
Or if you have a piece of land and you break off one piece, that's fine. As soon as you break off the second, that creates the third lot.
Within
Right.
3 years or 5 years. or
Yes, 5 years.
whatever.
So we better get that, I'd like to
This
see that as well.
is
the information.
unbelievable. Are you you're
I'm
sure?
positive. And we even checked with Kirsten, and she said, absolutely, dwelling triggers zoning.
I've
That's
never
what
heard,
it should trigger.
right, but I've never heard in St. George, Owl's Head, I've never heard of anybody saying, ooh, you're gonna build a 3-unit building? Where's your subdivision application?
Right.
I've never heard that ever mentioned.
And the one at the top of Ingram's Hill, Ocean Avenue across the street on Wiley's Road, there's one that house right there's a 3-unit house, and I was it.
I think it's in the law book or something, they are, because.
I think we're gonna be sure on that. I think we need to.
You had too many else.
She checked with the state, I checked with the state, and we checked with Kristen on it too. Because I was dumbfounded, I didn't believe it. But it is clearly, and she said, the only thing we can do, we cannot eliminate that requirement. But we can have a separate process. So they come in for a subdivision review, you go, is this just a dwelling unit on your 100-acre property? Okay, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, this doesn't apply, here's your permit.
Well, we better do that, because otherwise, I mean, it's kind of an onerous process, subdivision review.
Oh, I know,
It's lengthy.
I know.
It's so I think if in other words, the
Surveys,
state,
bylaws, it's a lot of stuff.
how could the state put this forward?
Apparently, it's been the subdivision law for years. This isn't something new.
That I'm amazed that they haven't addressed it in this 20
Yeah,
years.
They did. In one of them I saw said specifically, this does not change, the requirement for subdivision review. And I think it's in the thing that MMA sent out.
Yeah, I think that's my law in the law book.
Yeah, no, right here, subdivision law, the Affordable House Law expressly provides that it is not exempt to subdividers from the requirements of the state subdivision law.
So they knew it when they wrote it, and they went ahead and wrote it in.
Affordable housing development or the addition of single-family dwelling units to a lot may trigger subdivision review.
Well, we'll make a subdivision review for 3 units. More.
Well, this is the difference between.
We have a-
lots.
Well, we have
Dwelling units.
minor and major subdivisions in this town. Right now,
You want, what's that?
we get it, once you go over 7, it's major subdivision in South Thompson. So then minor subdivision is, that means you can eliminate things. You know, that you say a big lot, a big bunch of houses, you might want, you know, a couple of fire ponds, a small subdivision may want 1, you may want none.
That was always up to the fire department, I thought. When I was.
There's an ordinance on it, yes, for a subdivision, but, you know, the distances and so forth. But anyway, there's major and minor subdivisions in this town already. So you could do the same thing with a building. If it's a single build, say somebody wants to convert a larger building into 3 units. There was a 2-unit building or something, or a big house, and they want to cut it up into 3 apartments in there or something like that. You could have a rule for that. I mean, a review on that,
Streamlined process.
a review on that.
It's absurd if we don't.
I'm not opposed to that. I think that's a good idea.
But again, I think we attacked that after we
Well, you brought it up, so we had.
I know. So the last thing I kind of want to discuss is that public meeting, informational meeting. I'm looking for how much you want to participate and how much you want me to. I don't mind carrying the ball on it completely, because it's really for me to get answers to my questions from the town. I'm really curious.
I would think the planning board's involved in all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I wanna be
And
there.
it should be either a joint meeting or something like that.
Okay, I mean, I'll certainly, I plan to attend, I've already got it on my calendar
Yeah.
for the 28th.
But I think the planning board already arranged for this date and for the 28th.
But I would really encourage us to do something through email.
Yeah, we have a
So that
meeting.
Yeah, and so.
Get as much.
Maybe we have any business.
As possible.
Yeah,
Now, this meeting's gonna be just on the 28th. I see that the plan will meet for 6 o'clock, right? So what's this one? I thought we was gonna do the public hearing at 5:30.
Yeah.
And
Would that be out there too?
here.
That'll be here as well.
My post agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I just wanna make sure it's people
I
know.
can put something out on the list.
That'd be good,
Earlier
yeah.
saying that this is coming up.
Yeah, and I'll draft something for you to put out
Okay.
there.
And I would do it like, you know,
Because I do want to pique their interest in coming.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna mention, the state is encouraging us to.
what I would do is you have it right here.
Yeah.
You have these bullet points right here. That could be put in the email. And just this, that's what kind of what the discussion is gonna be about. Right, that's what it is, right? All
Well,
that,
it's a twofold discussion. One is, this is the state law, and we're having to change the ordinance, and here's why.
okay,
But it comes at a cost, because we're now putting more buildings upon.
but for the public, if you're putting this up for information, you could say, use these bullet points right here, so they know what's gonna be talked about, what can be talked about. But that's what we're gonna be informing them on. Says the, application, multiple sections of the law or whatever, accelerated dwelling unit densities, additional dwelling units, affordable housing development, all that kind of stuff. That should be kind of in the email or the invite, I guess.
And then the second part is to get town feedback on how much or how little the town gets involved in short-term, long-term rental.
Right, I mean, there's some feedback in terms of what I was proposing, that's gonna be, right. I mean, they can give us feedback. Mandated by the customer,
That we,
that these changes get included into our.
I understand that, but as far as mandating reporting short-term rentals, is
No,
not,
short term is a whole different thing.
Yeah, so right now, I got no feedback from anybody on this. My desire would be to include something in our ordinance that requires short-term and long-term rentals properties to notify the town office so that we can keep record of them. I think that.
What's the enforcement on that gonna be?
No, I mean,
Right.
to be frank, it serves two purposes. One is it satisfies our due diligence on getting to the intent of this. So that somebody looks over our shoulder at what we produce, they can't say we did not consider this or included. And the other is, I do think it's a valuable tool for the town and for anybody who visits, and I think it'll make life easier on the CEOs, so. Which is what I'm all about. Okay,
So we're saying here, no inspections by the CEO, no for these short-term rentals.
Yeah. Remember, our CEO,
Well, what right do we have to be notified with though? Why do we, you know what I mean? That's what somebody's gonna say to you.
what?
They're gonna say, why do you need to notify someone around my place?
A whole bunch of people that'll be saying that.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't want the government knowing anything about that.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to head on here.
It's always.
No, so they're not gonna comply.
Can we have
We'll
the
know
vote
about that.
for the writing of that letter with Gabe?
Sure.
We don't have enforcement.
Gabe, don't go anywhere.
You still there, Gabe? We don't see
I'm
you.
still here, yep, I'm listening.
Go ahead, give your spiel to the gate.
Did you have anything else for us?
No, but I do, no, for the planning board,
Endorsing the,
I make the motion that the planning board write a letter in support of the application or fund by the Conservation Commission to refund the town for the purchase cost.
okay, I'll second that.
And I volunteer Gabe to write that letter.
Okay. Any further discussion on that?
None.
Oh, I can write it.
Okay,
in
thank
favor?
you.
In favor? Okay.
Bye.
Aye.
Yes. The only other thing that we talked about, very briefly was, and this is a Jeff thing maybe, was adding a definition, for the of landscaping somewhere. Because we've had this come up, Jeff, in recent, applications before the planning board where there is a provision in the performance standards review that we do that allows us to require certain things like screening, plantings, landscaping, to improve the visual appearance and or hide things of different types of
Yeah,
projects that come before us.
We already have that in our performance standards now.
Yeah, I know, I'm saying, but what we don't have is a
Is the
definition
definition.
in the ordinance of what constitutes landscaping that might either screen or beautify. So there's no minimum standards anywhere for plant sizes, maintenance. You know, there's no real indication of what that is. So we have the ability to require it, but nowhere do we have the ability to point to what it is that we are requiring.
Well, I think we do. I think we can say you have to have, you know,
But it should be written down so that it's consistent.
we're already reviewing this, okay? The plan board is reviewing this right now. So what the problem is, you know, if
The
you have a
reason,
business, you
Irv,
want to
I'm
plant
sorry, I'm
shots.
just gonna finish. Irv, the reason I'm bringing it up here is that if there is a definition that is written, there is a chance that the appropriate place for that written definition to live is in the land use ordinance in the table of definitions. So that's the only reason we brought it up. And I agree, Irv, that the planning board hasn't agreed on our preferred definition yet and that we are currently working on it. But I wanted to let Jeff know that we were working on it, just so, just to get his opinion basically on whether such a definition would need to be included in this package of ordinance updates that gets voted on at town meeting.
Yeah, I think if you guys come up with a definition you want included in the ordinance, it would be best that we have that done for this town meeting.
By the 28th. Right?
Which is when,
Yeah, the informational meeting, you're saying? Or the
well,
28th?
no, it doesn't have to be for the information meeting. It can be for the actual hearing that we have that's 14 days prior to the town meeting.
It almost seems though, I mean, it's up to the planning board, obviously. But it almost seems like a messy yard definition, like you might get into some areas where it's almost, maybe would it be better to just leave it full discretion to the planning board? Like it's a conditional permit, you can do it.
And that's my, although I haven't thought about it great amount, but in general, I prefer general to specific unless it's required. Because I do think right now you have that ability to put it in the permit. When you give them the permit, you can write in there, I want it to be deciduous trees that are no shorter than 3 feet and no taller than 15 feet.
Correct.
Spaced 6 feet apart.
I guess the point is, Jeff, that if we have to negotiate that with every single project owner and they're gonna sit here and say, I can't afford that, I'm not gonna do that, I refuse landscaping, I'll plant some grass, yada, yada, yada. Then we're not gonna get very far very fast.
You just don't give them the permit.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
You don't
that's
have to give-
fair. I just think that there's probably a way to save time and give the appearance of fairness by defining potentially minimum standards for certain types of landscaping. And that's quite common in other ordinances. You know, there's just like a little section says like, for example, they'll say like for a parking lot, minimum size tree is X or something like that. I think it's up for discussion. It's totally fine, whichever way the board.
Each development is different. That's the trouble. Somebody may not have enough room or, or, you know, the fire truck can't turn around, there's a shrubbery there, or things like that. So you gotta kind of look at it on a case by case basis. I understand you wanna make it look better if you won't buy it on the road like that, but
Well, instead of thinking that you could be able to say, I think to the trees and proximity to them, if you just use general language like beautification, shielding, as these are the basis of what we're gonna be.
Yeah,
that's one of the proposals that's already in front of the planning board now.
But
yeah,
then
I was gonna say
don't
that's,
Yeah. no,
You won't have to worry about it because it will already be in the performance standards.
And I won't have to worry about it when they don't do it?
Well, then
yeah,
they
that's what I was gonna say.
violate
The other issue is that it becomes an enforcement problem. If you
Well,
say.
then- That's why you have a plan, you do the performance standard, if there is an enforcement problem, then they, you know, can get fined. Or whatever you wanna charge them to, you know, to take legal action against them if it's serious now.
And it goes to
They're gonna-
court and I planted grass, that's landscaping and.
No, well, we would be specific in our performance standards,
In your permit.
and you permit, yeah.
I mean, you live or die by what you write in the permit. And if you, because again, that could be reviewed 5 years from now. So trying to find the minutes on what you decided, that's why if it's something important, you need to put the actual words in the permit so that it's clear to her.
Right,
And keep the permit.
And keep the permit. I mean, that's the other part.
well, we have all the permits since I've been the chairman. We have a good record now and going forward.
No, I think
and if
we're
anything
doing
comes to do,
fine. We're doing fine with being specific, but I think we ended up in a situation recently, which was just a little like, it could have been avoided, where we had a particularly combative applicant who was just saying like, well, what's landscaping? What's beautification? What's this? What's that? And there was like so much.
Then we tell them.
Yeah, I mean, we could tell them, but in that particular case, we didn't. So we don't have
So it's just left as
we
landscaping.
don't necessarily have the track record of being able to define that on the fly when pressed. So I think it's worth considering, even if it's just internally to the planning
That
board,
would be, that's
what our
possible.
basic approach is and what we would like to write in the permit as a baseline. I just think it would
Right.
help to be
At
prepared.
the last
a
minute,
little bit
we did
better.
that. I wrote, I get some stuff. I sent it, I get it to the board. We eliminated one section about the fencing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I
Everything
understand
else,
that. I
the
think it's,
berms is all in there, the trees, and all the definitions of things that we can do. We can just require them to do that.
yeah, no, I think it's fine. I think I was
And
just,
I think we do, just use it as a guide for us, for the planning board. And for the CEO.
that would be okay too.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
it's
I always
okay.
say, because when we say, you're going to plant a hedge and somebody goes and buy, a plant that's tall, I mean, it's clearly,
Not the intent, right?
Yep.
I think John's right. I think you're gonna get into a lot of resistance or stuff like that. But anyway. It's
All right, that was my- that's all
It's in
I
the
had.
permit. We'll put it in the permit.
yeah.
I think you need something, because you're gonna have more, I mean, that guy, it's in his permit that he's gonna landscape. But it doesn't say what he's gonna landscape with, so how much they'll say, he's gonna plant grass or he's gonna put. He's gonna be real combative about it, and I don't have any.
Right,
back.
yeah, but going forward with others, we can
Be more
we can
specific.
More specific.
We need to explain what the purpose of the landscaping is, and if it's to shield, then, there has to be a height requirement, otherwise,
Right.
Yes, I think we
I
can
wasn't actually in the
work on
room.
that.
That's what I would have said.
Yeah, all right, I will, we can keep working on that inside the planning board, and Jeff, if it rises to the level of an ordinance change, we'll let you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thanks.
Anybody else have anything else?
Motion to adjourn, I guess.
Don't even need a motion.
All right, there we go.
thank you.
Thank you.
Unless somebody objects. We are adjourned.
No, turn yourself off.
Only maybe.
So the 28th, 5:30. Yes. Okay.